All right. Good evening, church. As you can see, I'm not here this evening. We had a trip that was planned months in advance before tonight, before we scheduled to do these classes. But fortunately, we can record this, and so I'm here tonight that way. I'll be back next week, so keep that in mind. Last week, we had started this section on society. How does society look when Jesus returns? And we talked about the days of Noah. The Lord mentioned that that society will look like the days of Noah in both the Olivet Discourse, found in Matthew 24, and he also mentions it in a different conversation that we find in Luke chapter 17. So let's go over there, where not only does he mention the days of Noah, he also mentions the days of Lot. So let's go ahead and read that. Likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so will it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Now, a lot of people will say that Jesus is just saying that the days of Noah, the days of Lot, he's just saying that people were living their normal lives and then destruction came and took them by surprise. Now, that is true, but many of us believe that he's also describing society. It's not just that people are going to be living a normal life. It's that society, when Jesus returns, will model these two events. So let's look a little more deeply into what happened with Sodom. What was going on? Why did God destroy it? So go ahead and turn in Genesis 19, verses 4 through 5, and that gives us the reasoning as to why this occurred. And so, starting in verse 4, it says, "But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, 'Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may know them.'" Now, a lot of people will look at this verse and say, well, that's not really talking about homosexuality. So we can test that. We can use the Bible itself to test that. So let's turn now to Romans chapter 1. And we are looking at verses 26 through 27. So starting in verse 26, and Paul is talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. It says, "For this reason God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error." We also have more information on this in Jude. So turn to Jude. It's only one chapter, so starting in verse 6. We read this last week, but again, let's read it. Let's read it again because it all goes together with what we're talking about tonight. So verse 6, "And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire." Now, depending on what version you're reading, what translation, there could say strange flesh there in Jude. So one thing to keep in mind is that we see in numerous places in the Bible where we see Jesus, Peter, and Jude all talk about, specifically in 2 Peter 2, they all talk about Noah and Lot together because they share some commonality. the destruction, and as we looked at Noah last week, both incidences had people or had instances of strange flesh, as Jude likes to call it. So let's look at our society today. Let's look where we're at. Currently in the United States, only 18% of U.S. households are nuclear families with a married couple and children. That's down from 40% since the 1970s, and it's the lowest point since 1959. Currently, there is a drastic increase in the proportion of births outside of marriage in the United States. From they did a study from 1990 to 2016. That's destructive to our society. Studies show that children that are born outside of marriage are generally raised in single-parent homes, and they're the ones that are likely to have problems in school. They're the ones that are more likely to get in trouble with the law. This is incredibly destructive to our society. We also see that people are more likely to cohabitate than they are to marry. This is again very destructive to our society. It doesn't spell good things coming for us in the future. So here's a look at the most popular websites in the world as of November of 2021. And I highlighted a couple of them there. Pornhub. These are in the billions per month. Per month. Over 2 billion people looking at Pornhub every month. And there's another one there that's called X videos. I'm just assuming that's probably in the line with Pornhub. That's over 2 billion people as well. This is destructive to marriages. It's destructive to families. It is one of the most destructive forces in our society right now. So in 1 Timothy 4:3, we actually see that this is in 1 Timothy 4, where he's talking about the false church that's going to be around in the last days, and Paul states this to Timothy: forbidding to marry and commanding to abstain from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. Now, the first part of that, forbidding to marry, we're going to talk about the status of the church next week, but I wanted to go ahead and put this in here because for centuries it's been confusing as to why would the church forbid to marry. But today we're actually seeing why that actually might be. And here's how we can see that. It's a Forbes article. It says how gay marriage suggests a strategy for climate change. In other words, what they're saying is that by you getting married, procreating, having kids, you're contributing to climate change, and what you're doing is wrong. The gay marriage, that's great. That's helping save the planet. But is Lot's time, the days of Lot, really about the marriage and having kids out of wedlock, which is destructive to society? But no, it's more specifically talking about homosexuality. So let's look at and see what the Bible says about homosexuality. In Leviticus 19:22, you shall not lie with male as with a woman. It is an abomination. In Isaiah chapter 3, verse 8, for Jerusalem stumbled and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord, to provoke the eyes of his glory. The look on their countenance witness against them, and they declared their sin as Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to their soul, for they have brought evil upon themselves. And we read through Romans earlier, and we also read through Jude. So again, those are examples of God saying, This isn't the way I designed things. So also, God's first command to man in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So homosexuality is actually in rebellion to this, because God made us to get married and to have children, to procreate. And now some people may say, well, we're married, but we can't conceive. That happens, but you're still in line with God, because most people would like to conceive, even when they're in that situation. And this is where we're at today. Is they're not only trying to prevent people from getting married, they're also trying to prevent people from having children. So you'll see this a lot. Love is love. That's actually not true. Homosexuality is not, it's not actual love. It's unnatural lust. Homosexuality it redefines what God said love is. It's unintended by God and is in rebellion. Now, this doesn't mean that we go off and we hate homosexuals, not at all. A lot of these people have had some very traumatic events in their life, and most of them probably don't understand that what they're doing is a result of that. Some do, but a lot of them don't. The gay community has for many decades used this flag. This is their rainbow flag. It has 6 stripes on it, 6 different colors. The original flag had 8 colors. I'm going to show you what the guy said he got this flag from in a minute. But they settled more recently for decades on the 6 stripe flag, and they more with bringing in transsexuals and transsexuality and all that. They've now settled on they have many different flags, but this has been historically the flag that they've flown most of all. Really, the purpose of this flag is to thumb their nose at God. I mean, how do we know that? Well, because the Creator himself said that he was inspired to make this flag because of the Bible. He took the rainbow from the Bible and made it into a flag. So where are we at in our society with this? Well, here's a poll from Gallup, and this is talking about the whole community, which they refer to as the LGBT community, from 2012 to 2021. So in a span of 9 years, the people who identify in our society, our whole population has doubled. It went from 3.5% in 2012, and 2021, 7.1% of the population. So we also have a poll on the generations, how that's broken down. So let's start at the bottom here. This poll says traditionalist, but I'm pretty sure that generation is called the silent generation. Born before 1946, 0.8% identify as LGBT. Baby boomers, 2.6%. Gen X, 4.2%. Millennials, 10.5%. Gen Z, 20.8%. My daughter and my kids' generation isn't out. They're still too young, so they don't have their numbers up here. But if you take a good look at this, what we're looking at here is that it doubles every generation. So if we continue on this trend for couple more decades down the road, the vast majority of people will be LGBT. Now, is that completely accurate? We don't know, but it's doubling. You can see this. It's plain as day. So views on same-sex marriage by country, and it's not just the U.S. So this is a poll from most Western countries. The green area is the amount of people, the percentage of people in a country that support same-sex marriage. And for most Western countries, it averages around 60%. Some countries like Canada, as high as 75% of their population agree with same-sex marriage. However, when you get down to Malaysia, Malaysia has a very large Islamic population. They're very low. It's less than 10% for them. So this is the White House that was lit up in rainbow colors back when Obama was president. The Supreme Court decided to allow for same-sex marriage. Gay marriage it's not marriage. Nowhere in the Bible does God authorize two men or two women to marry each other. And there's really no legitimate reason for them to get married. Marriage is a sacred union. It's created by God. It's a model for our relationship with our bridegroom, Jesus, and also God's bride, Israel. Its purpose was to put a man and woman together, again, so they can procreate. And at the center of their marriage is God. So it doesn't make any sense for two men or two women to get married because they're not in this covenant. I've had this conversation with people like this, and again, I try to have as gentle of a conversation as possible. That marriage is a covenant with God. It doesn't make any sense for you to want this. Their response usually is, well, we want the same legal rights that you have. For instance, when my partner's in the hospital, I want to go visit that person, or I want the same tax credits you get. That's not a reason for marriage, and most states already had things in place that allowed for these things. The push, in my opinion, was for something else. And people like me said that once you go down this road, other things are going to come from this. It's a slippery slope. So many people believe that their push for same-sex marriage was ultimately to hurt traditional marriage. And look at the verse in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31 through 32. Again, going back to Genesis. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. So it's a model. The marriage is a model. So Disney, there's been a lot of talk about Disney in the news with the law that was passed in Florida. And so Disney condemns DeSantis' law signing Florida's anti-grooming bill into law. And that's exactly what it was. What that law said was you can't talk about sexual education to kids from kindergarten through third grade. And what's interesting about that is that by the time kids reach fourth grade, most of their thoughts and personalities have been grounded. So the left knows that you have to get them earlier than fourth grade. And that's why they threw such a big fit about that. Disney execs, they want to take revenge, and they said they vow to put in more gay characters amid huge inclusivity push. Down here, I have highlighted LGBTQ community count for 50% of its regular characters by the end of the year. So by the end of this year, they want 50% of all characters you see on their shows to be part of the gay community. So we were told for decades that homosexuals were born this way. And if that's the case, why are they pushing it on kids so badly? It's not just for acceptance. Fatherly is a big Twitter account, and it says this: pride parades and pride festivals that follow are noisy and crowded. They're filled with sights that may be new to kids, like public nudity and kink. So is it appropriate to take your young kids to Pride? I mean, that's not even a question you should have to ask. And then below it says, yes, you should take your kids. So Pride Month. Which Israeli cities are the most LGBTQ friendly? Israel is considered one of the most friendly countries on the planet for the LGBT community. Look at this. Welcome to Tel Aviv, the gayest city on earth. Tel Aviv is estimated to have more than 30% of its population identifies as LGBT. More than 30% of their population. So homosexuality in Israel, again, very friendly towards it. They have pride parades are common there. 10% of the whole population of Israel is reported as gay. Again, Tel Aviv is 25%. Sorry, I was wrong on that. 25% of its population. Revelation chapter 11, verse 8 states this about Jerusalem. This is talking about the two witnesses. We'll talk more about this later on, but there are two witnesses that show up at the beginning of the tribulation, and they preach for 3.5 years outside the temple. And at the midpoint of the tribulation, the Antichrist kills them. Their bodies lie dead on the street for 3 days for the entire world to see. So it says that the entire world watches this and sees it. It says, and their bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. So it appears that Jerusalem will have some similarities with Sodom towards in the end times. So let's go ahead and watch this video here of a choir. Listen to their words.
As we celebrate Pride and the progress we've made over these past years, there's still work to be done. So to those of you out there who are still working against equal rights, we have a message for you.
You think we're sinful? You fight against our rights. You say we all lead lives you can't respect. But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. You can keep him from disco, warn about San Francisco. Make him wear pleated pants, we don't care. We'll convert your children. We'll make them tolerant and fair.
At first I didn't get why you'd be so scared of us turning your children into accepting, caring people, but I see now why you'd have a problem with that.
Just like you worried, they'll change their group of friends. You won't approve of where they go at night to protests. Oh, and you'll be disgusted so gross when they start finding things online that you've kept far from their sight, like information. Guess what? You'll still be alright. We'll convert your children, yes we will.
Reaching one and all, there's really no escaping it.
'Cause even grandma likes RuPaul.
And the world's getting kinder.
Gen Z's gayer than Grindr. Learn to love, learn to vogue, face your fate. We'll convert your children. Someone's gotta teach them not to hate. We're coming for them.
We're coming for your children.
All right. So that choir received a lot of backlash, which is good for that. They received a lot of backlash. They came out and they said, "Oh, it was just a joke. We were just joking. That was all just in fun." The problem is that over the last year, I can't tell you how many videos I've seen, and I didn't include any of them because they're, quite frankly, they're disgusting and evil. How many videos I've seen of teachers coming out and saying that they're pushing their beliefs on homosexuality on kids and getting kids to say things, telling small children that, oh, you may be gay, you may be trans. It's gotten so far out of control. And I'm going to show you some of that here in a second. We've gone past homosexuality, and now we're dealing, I mean, we're still dealing with homosexuality, don't get me wrong, but again, that slippery slope I was talking about, we're sliding down it. And we're to a point where we have men dressing up as women, and society's telling us that if we question that, we are bigots and we're evil. Here's a headline here. Twitter suspends the Babylon Bee after it named Rachel Levine Man of the Year. Well, Rachel Levine is a man. He was married at one time and had kids. He's now dressed as a woman. Babylon Bee is a satire news site, and they're Christian. They're owned by a Christian, owned and operated by a Christian. And Twitter suspended their account, said that if you want your account back, you have to apologize and admit that your post was wrong. The reason why they put that out there is because I think it was Time magazine stated that Rachel Levine was Woman of the Year. Again, a man. So in Australia, Coles Supermarket will give trans and gender fluid staff 10 extra paid leave days. Why? So what does God say about transsexuals? Bible does mention this. In Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5, a woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all who do so are an abomination to your Lord God. The enemy's purpose with transsexual, it's to deny God's creation. Specifically, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. That's what this is doing. It's an attack on that. Did you know that there's more than just two genders? Yeah, there's actually more than what you're seeing here. This is just a small snippet according to what they are telling us. I was pretty shocked to see this. This has become normal, and it is the younger generation. You can see this stuff on social media. They've really attached themselves to it. It's being pushed and taught in schools and colleges and universities. In fact, you can go on Amazon right now and purchase a shirt that says there are more than two genders, but you can only get it in men or women's sizes. So for those other 50 plus genders, I'm sorry, they don't make them in those. New Jersey woman's prison inmate pregnant after sex with transgender prisoner. I mean, this is where we're going. People are now starting to pretend they're pretending to get the benefits of being transgender. Trans dad tells doctors you can be a man and have a baby. So again, this when we go down this slippery slope, all things are all things are out. There's no such thing as a trans dad. You can't be a man and have a baby. But again, they're denying basic biology, and it's crazy. But that's where we're headed. Now you can go on your iPhone, if you have an iPhone, and you can get a pregnant man emoji. We have trans athletes. These are both guys. So on the left is a swimmer. You may have seen this person in the news. He is, of course, he claims to be a woman now, and he's beating women severely in collegiate swimming. Won the national title. As he was on the men's team several years ago, and I think he was ranked something like 600 something in the country. So people have asked the question, did you do this just to start winning races? On the other side, on the other picture, the person in white is a biological male dressed as a woman. And this, I don't know this person's name, but they are an MMA fighter, and he is fighting and beating up women. So this woman he beat, as you can see, I didn't show you the result of it. She's beaten pretty badly. You can see some blood on the mat there. So what's the next thing they're going after? Pedophilia. Chicago gay pastor holds drag queen story hour for kids during a service. Now, this is what people consider grooming. You're bringing kids and you're basically indoctrinating them and telling them that transgenderism, homosexuality, it's all perfectly normal. This is all the way things should be. And again, we're going to talk more about this next week when we get to the status of a church. This is a pastor in Chicago, dressed as a woman. That's a guy dressed as a woman, holding drag queen story hour for kids in his church. We've got all the corporations have jumped on this, and I'll explain why when we get to world economy. If you're working for a corporation, such as like mine, you see the push. It's a big push, and the reason for it is because of a credit score system. It's called ESG. We'll talk more about that when we get to world economy. But you'll see this on shows now. It's being pushed big time. So Discovery Plus has a show for teenagers, and it's called Generation Drag, I think. And so it's all teenagers. And it's all boys, I think they're all boys, dressed up as girls. You can go to Target and purchase a shirt for your small child that says trans rights are human rights. I mean, these kids don't even understand what this is. And I guarantee you there are parents out there that bought this shirt for their kids to wear. And I say that because I've seen videos of parents taking their small kids to pride parades or different gay celebrations. I've seen video of a mom, the little boy sitting there playing on his video game system. The mom takes it away and says, "Pay attention." The boy basically says, "I don't want to pay attention. I don't want to be here." The mom's forcing it on him. You can get LGBT cereal made by Kellogg's for your kids. I mean, that's what it's marketed for. It's not marketed to you or me. It's marketed to children. This is a clip from Blue's Clues. Now, if you've had kids or grandkids recently and they were small, they probably watched Blue's Clues at some point. It's supposed to be an educational show. This is a pride parade they had on Blue's Clues, and went through these. There's again, like I said earlier, the gay community has a lot of different flags, and they go through each one of them on here for the kids. So again, why? If the left keeps on telling us, well, they have for decades, they're born that way, then why would you need to do this? Actress, LGBTQ activist Laverne Cox, it's a man, biological man, honored with their own Barbie doll. So now they're making toys for children that are trans dolls. So this is from a public school in Florida. Broward County in Florida, public school district, has been accused by parents for instructing staff to promote transgenderism to children and then hide it from parents. And that's going on all across the country. So this went out to kids here, and this image, and says transgender and non-binary students guidelines and procedures. So I think this is for teachers and how they were going to get around DeSantis's law, that they can't teach this. State Farm launches program to distribute LGBTQ books to kindergartners. This hit the media, and State Farm pulled it back. State Farm didn't want people knowing they were doing this, but they were doing it, and it was happening all across the country. We had that earlier. So this has actually been seen in multiple schools across the country. It is a picture on a teacher's door with different flags on what looks like to be polar bears. And it says, if your parents aren't accepting of your identity, I'm your mom now. So they're undermining parents. The school systems have gone insane. This is Drag Queen Story Hour. That's what this picture is. This is what's reading to these children, this person here. Now I want you to look at the head. The head of this person has horns on it, 5 horns, and this person who created that's a pentagram. That's an upside down star. It's a satanic sign that he's got on his head for children. So, this is warning. The legalization of pedophilia is next. The mass media campaign to normalize pedophilia is now. Be alert and stand against it. That's exactly what's happening. They are pushing that. They're trying to basically state that transgenderism is here, it's accepted, and now we're moving on to pedophilia. So this college professor says that pedophilia should be a part of the gay movement. It should be legally recognized as a wider sexual liberation. In other words, he's saying what they've said about homosexuals for decades. They're born that way. So who are you to say that they're wrong? Queer academics suggest pedophilia be taught in schools as an innate sexuality. So again, they're teaching homosexuality, transsexualism in schools. Now they want pedophilia taught to children and teach that it's normal. People are born that way, and there's nothing wrong with it. So let's watch this quick video here of our most recent Supreme Court justice.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can?
not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not,
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
The reason why I wanted to play that there is because that judge had numerous cases before her that dealt with pedophilia, and she gave them slaps on the hand, every single one. And she even stated how she felt sorry for them. She supports it, and she won't. And of course, that is a ridiculous video that she won't. She can't even tell you what a woman is. Yet, we're told that she's the first black woman Supreme Court justice. I'm not sure how she couldn't tell us what a woman was. But it goes beyond this push for pedophilia goes beyond just education. This push for transgenderism goes beyond education as well. And it's right here at home, unfortunately. This is Boston's Children's Hospital. This is for children, not adults, children. They will do gender surgery. In other words, they'll give a child a sex change operation, or put that child on medication that's such as puberty blockers, hormone blockers. We've gone way off the deep end, and the reason for this is money. I saw the statistic. They're making billions off this, and that's what it's about. They don't care. Money is more important than humanity. And it's not just in Boston, unfortunately, right here in Texas Children's. There's a lady that, if you ever go to Chick-fil-A on Fairmont, there's a lady there that may help you out. It's an older lady named Miss Pat. Very nice lady. If you see her there, talk to her, be very sweet to her. She has a good friend that was recently let go from Texas Children's. The hospitals in our country were forced under the Biden administration to fire anyone who didn't take the COVID vaccine. And so her friend didn't take the COVID vaccine, refused to take it. They fired her. And we asked, how is she doing? And she was telling us that she was actually relieved. She didn't really need to work. I think her husband had a good job. And she was relieved because they were doing this there, and this woman's a Christian, and her conscience was bothering her working there, knowing that these things were happening to children. So, my wife and I, we have a very good friend who's a nurse, and she worked there for 10 years. They live in Hawaii now, but they worked there, and that wasn't going on at that time. So every once in a while, the media comes out and tells you exactly why they're doing what they're doing. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, you'll find out what the agenda is because they'll tell you. And this is one such case. Huffington Post comes out with a story, and it says, homosexuality as population control. Why gays and lesbians are essential to the balance of nature. It says here, the obvious reduction in population growth attributable to homosexuality by itself indubitably works to preserve the species. So they're telling you this is about depopulation. That's why they're pushing it. Much of what we're going to be talking about going forward is going to be about depopulation. It's to the global elite, they consider that their number one thing, depopulation. So much so, you'll see that they carved it in granite and put it up as a monument. So you can see here if you look down below on this, they have two pictures. So on the right-hand side, it looks like a concert, I guess, as a bunch of people gathered together, and it says, not to be gay. So in other words, they're saying this is bad, all these people are bad, and on the left-hand side, we have two people on a bicycle, and it says to be gay. In other words, they're saying the left picture is good, the right picture bad. You don't want to be on the right picture. So let's take a look at, since we're wrapping up our 2-week study on what society will look like, let's take a look at the last generation. There's a big description of it in 2 Timothy 2 Timothy chapter 3 verses 1 through 5, and I broke it down here. I bullet pointed it. So, and I'm sure that you guys can probably pick out things you've dealt with, people you know that match up to this. So, lovers of self. How many times have you been in your car and been cut off by people? I mean, the person didn't do that because they loved you. Lovers of money. We just talked about how much of this push for transsexualism on children, it's about money. Proud. Well, the homosexual community, that's one of the words they like to use, pride parade. Arrogant. We see it all over the place today, especially in our sports. Abusive. Disobedient to parents. I don't know how, I can tell you it's almost commonplace now when you go out in public, you'll see kids that are completely out of control. And I'm not saying that this hasn't happened historically, of course it has, but it seems to be so much more prevalent now that you'll see kids just completely out of control, saying horrible things to their parents, and their parents just sit there, they don't say anything. Ungrateful. Unholy. Heartless. Unappeasable. Slanderous. Without self-control. And that's the thing, is that we're told today that we're just animals. They push evolution. We're just animals. So you're just going by instinct. They'll say, do what feels good. That's actually a satanic teaching. We'll talk about that next week. Brutal. Not loving good. How much do we see that? So many people don't love what is good, they love what's evil. Treacherous. Reckless. Swollen with conceit. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. That is a big one. We're seeing that all over the place. People would rather do something pleasurable than do something that will be profitable, such as do some work. Spend time with your children. A lot of what we see today, we see people disregarding their children and going off and doing what they want to do, and not spending that time with their kids, which is needed. Having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. So again, that's going to be a big one for next week, because we're talking about the status of the church. What does it look like in our society today? And we have churches, we have people that are heads of churches, involved in churches, churchgoers, that they appear godly, but they deny it. They deny its power. They're simply there for their own purposes. So that is all for this week. For next week, again, we're going to be talking about the church. What does church look like in our society right now? Is it strong? Are we growing? Are we shrinking? What's it look like? So for next week, read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. I will be back next week. And again, if you have questions, ask even from this or even back from the very first teaching. Come see me at the end or ask them when I get finished. and we can talk about any of the lessons. So, and if you don't want to ask in front of everyone, just come find me after we're done, and we can discuss it. But thank you for coming out, and I will see you next week.